They mocked the quiet janitor for years, called him Old Man Loser, right to his face, until one rainy afternoon the FBI rolled up in black SUVs, and the man they laughed at stepped forward holding a medal most Americans have only seen in movies, and said the words that turned the entire school silent. "I'm the reason half of you are alive today. Thus, if you love your mom and dad, the people who would do anything to keep you safe, hit that subscribe button right now and show some love." Let's get into the story. The rain hammered the cracked windows of Jefferson High School in suburban Ohio the way it always did every November, hard, cold, and unforgiving. Inside room 204, seniors were laughing so loud the sound leaked into the hallway, where a gray-haired man in a faded blue jumpsuit pushed a mop bucket. His name tag read Carl. Just Carl, no last name, the way he liked it. He moved slow, head down, like gravity weighed more on him than on anyone else. The kids had nicknames for him: Janitor Carl, Creepy Carl, Carl the Ghost. They snapped wet towels near his legs in the locker room, hid his cart, drew cartoons of him sleeping in trash cans on the bathroom walls. He never reacted, never raised his voice, just kept mopping in perfect straight lines. That afternoon, the laughter in 2-on-4 belonged to Jake Brennan, starting quarterback, TikTok famous, the kid who already had college scouts blowing up his phone. He was reading aloud a fake school announcement he'd typed on his laptop, projecting it on the smartboard for the whole class to see. "Attention students, due to budget cuts, our beloved janitor Carl will now be replaced by a Roomba. Please stop feeding it French fries." The room exploded. Someone barked like a dog. Someone else threw a paper wad that hit Carl's bucket as he passed the open door. He didn't look up. Across the hall, English teacher Sarah Mitchell watched the whole thing and felt her stomach knot. She had tried for 3 years to get the kids to leave Carl alone. She'd written detentions, called parents, even pulled Jake aside once and begged him to have a heart. Jake just grinned and said, "Relax, Miss M. It's just jokes. The dude's basically furniture." Sarah glanced and liked the old man. There was something about the way he listened when you talked, really listened, like every word mattered. Once, when she was crying in the faculty lounge over her divorce papers, Carl had silently slid a cup of tea across the table. No words, just tea. She still didn't know how he knew she needed it. At 2:17 p.m. the rain turned violent, wind rattling the windows like it wanted in. The intercom crackled, which it never did after 2500. Principal Ramirez's voice sounded strange, thin. "All students and staff report to the auditorium immediately." This is not a drill. A pause. "We have visitors." The hall's filled fast. Funds came out. Someone joked about aliens. Jake live streamed the whole walk, narrating like he was on SportsCenter. Sarah found herself walking beside Carl, who carried nothing but a small canvas bag slung over his shoulder. She asked if he was okay. He gave the smallest nod, eyes forward. The auditorium was chaos, 800 teenagers trying to figure out what was more important, filming or panicking. On stage stood Principal Ramirez, pale, flanked by 4 men in dark windbreakers with yellow letters on the chest: FBI. One of them, a tall woman with short silver hair, held a folder thick enough to knock someone out. The biggest agent stepped to the microphone. "My name is Special Agent in Charge Laura Delgado, Washington Field Office. We are here for an individual currently employed by this school. We need everyone to remain calm." The room went dead quiet except for the rain on the roof. Jake whispered, "Holy crap," into his phone. Agent Delgado continued, "We are looking for retired Master Sergeant Carl Anthony Whitlock, United States Delta Force, call sign Reaper. Sergeant Whitlock, please come forward." 800 heads swiveled like they were on strings. Sarah felt her knees buckle. Carl took one slow step down the aisle, then another. His boots made no sound. He climbed the 3 steps to the stage and stood in front of the agents. The silver-haired woman opened the folder, removed a velvet case, and flipped it open. Inside was a silver star on a blue and white ribbon, the Medal of Honor. She held it out. "Master Sergeant Whitlock," she said, voice cracking just slightly, "on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, we apologize for the delay. Your presence is requested in Washington immediately. The country needs you again." A sound came out of the auditorium, half gasp, half sob. Phones dropped. Jake's live stream hit 2 million views in 40 seconds and kept climbing. Carl didn't take the medal. He looked out at the sea of faces, found Jake's, held it for a long second, then turned back to Agent Delgado. "Mom," he said, voice rough but steady, "I'm just the janitor here. Delgado smiled like she'd been waiting years to hear that answer. "With respect, Sergeant, you stopped being just anything 23 years ago outside Tora Bora." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. The kids who'd thrown food at him, who'd laughed when he limped after 12-hour shifts, they looked like someone had punched them in the soul. Jake's face went white as printer paper. Carl finally took the medal, but instead of pinning it on, he tucked it into his pocket like it was an old bus token. He faced the microphone himself. "I know what most of you think of me," he began, and the microphone squealed because his hand was shaking. "I've heard every joke. I've cleaned up after every party. I've found your vomit, your drugs, your pregnancy tests. I never said a word because I gave mine up a long time ago." He reached into the canvas bag and pulled out a folded American flag in a triangle case. The room got quieter than any library on earth. 23 years ago, he said, I was 29 years old. My team was sent into a cave complex to find a man the world still talks about. We found him. We also found 300 pounds of weapons-grade uranium headed for New York Harbor on a container ship called the Atlantic Dawn. My team never came home. I was the only one who walked out. They told me I was a hero. They gave me this medal. Then they told me the mission never happened, the team never existed, and if I ever spoke about it, the people I loved would disappear. So I disappeared instead. He looked straight at Jake. "I took this job because my granddaughter goes here, class of 2027. She asked me not to embarrass her, so I kept my head down. Turns out I embarrassed her anyway." A girl in the sophomore section started crying loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah realized it was Emily Whitlock, tiny, freckled, the one who never talked about her family. Carl's voice dropped. "I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you because today the rules changed. That uranium never made it to New York, but there's more out there, and the people moving it just woke up an old ghost. I have to go finish what I started when most of you were in diapers." He stepped back from the microphone. Agent Delgado took over. "The school is on lockdown for the next 48 hours. No one speaks about this to anyone, not parents, not TikTok, not the news. Lives depend on it. Anyone who violates that will be prosecuted under the Patriot Act. Am I clear?" 800 heads nodded like puppets. Carl walked off the stage. Students parted like the Red Sea. He stopped in front of Jake, who couldn't look up. Carl placed something in the boy's shaking hand, a challenge coin, dull and scratched, with a skull and the words, "Dia Presso Liber." Jake stared at it like it burned. "Son," Carl said quietly, "next time you want to tear someone down, remember some of us are already carrying more than you'll ever understand." He kept walking. Sarah followed him into the hallway. The rain had stopped. Sunlight poured through the windows like the building itself was exhaling. "Carl," she said, tears streaming, "why didn't you ever tell anyone?" He smiled for the first time in 3 years. It changed his whole face. "Because heroes get statues, Sarah. Janitors get to watch kids grow up safe. I picked the better deal." Outside, a black helicopter sat on the football field, blades already turning. Carl climbed in without looking back. The door closed. The chopper lifted, banked east, and disappeared into the sky. Inside the school, the bell rang for dismissal, but nobody moved. Jake stood in the auditorium holding the coin so tight his knuckles went white. On the smartboard behind him, his fake announcement still glowed, "Please stop feeding the Ruba French fries." He reached up with trembling fingers and deleted every word. 2 days later, a new janitor started, young guy, loud music in his earbuds. Nobody joked with him. Nobody ever would again. In the faculty lounge, someone left a fresh cup of tea on the table every morning, even though no one saw who put it there. And in Washington, in a secure room beneath the Pentagon, the president shook hands with a gray-haired man in a borrowed suit who still smelled faintly of pine cleaner and floor wax. When the president asked what he needed, Carl answered the same way he'd answered every question for 23 years. "Just doing my job, sir." The country never heard the full story. They never will. But every kid who was in that auditorium that day grew up different. They became doctors, soldiers, teachers, parents, and every single one of them carried a quiet promise. Never again laugh at the quiet ones, because some storms wear jumpsuits and push mops, and when they decide to thunder, the whole world listens. So tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from tonight? Drop your city, your state, let's put it on the map. And if this story hit you in the chest the way it hit me telling it, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We tell the real ones here, no filter, no fluff. I'll see you in the next one.